Okay, just so we all know we're recorded. Pete, thanks for being on. It looks like are you in Nigeria?
Yes.
Okay, super. Looks like you got a good thing going there.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, I think let's start with a couple questions. What's the tentative dates we have right now?
Well, you would ask me that.
I asked the hard questions.
I was prepared for everything else, and I've since lost my mind. How about you keep talking, and I'll get you those dates.
Okay, well, let's go to I don't have really very many questions. I think, well, I have a few. Has any groups, I think you've had one group come over there, correct?
Yeah, so we had one group of 7 come, and then we've had several individuals. So it really is opening up. There still are the kind of government regulations, but it's really pretty much some of it is essential for flying. So having a negative COVID test 3 days before you actually leave California or wherever people are coming from, and then with that negative COVID test, the company will send it to you so you have it, and then you have to upload that into this Nigerian website, and I can help you navigate that, and then you pay $105. So you actually have to pay for your negative COVID test in the US. Then you pay in the Nigerian system $105, which pays for your COVID test that you'll take here 3 days before you're going back to the US, because you'll need that negative COVID test to get back into the United States. So those things are in place and those are enforced, and I'll help you on that. It's just that in budgeting, now you've got a budget, airfare, one shot, which is yellow fever. You can ask your local health department if they recommend, but I think the only mandatory one is yellow fever, which is really all you need. We've never had anyone catch anything else, but you'll get like an anti-malarial. If you don't have that, we can buy it for you here in really good pharmacies. So then you've got your airfare, you've got your yellow fever, you've got your visa. So that one will need to start on, maybe 2 months before you're getting here. We'll help you with the visa thing, and we have information about the website. But that's become more expensive because they have to kind of hand deliver that to the embassy in like Washington, D.C. or Atlanta. I can't remember where the best one is right now, but that used to just be $100 and something. But that whole process is up to like maybe $400 and something. So you have airfare, yellow fever is cheaper, free. You've got the visa thing now, which is like gotten expensive. You've got a negative COVID test, which I don't know what that runs, $100. I think actually if you have insurance, your COVID test may be free. I don't know. But then you've got now this new $105 thing. Once you get your negative COVID test, you upload it to the Nigerian system. You print out that you've paid. You'll need that to get on the plane, and then we'll use that to pay for your negative COVID test here. When you're in country, things are cheap, but unfortunately, getting here, especially with COVID, has become a lot more expensive.
Yeah, Peter, you remind me of my pastor when I asked him a question, looking for like a real short answer. Woo! I get a sermon. The good news is
I appreciate those details.
Now I don't have to go to church on Sunday. It's so sweet. Okay, so you've had a couple groups there. Let's go back to the beginning on this COVID thing. Are the rules different for vaccinated people versus unvaccinated people?
No, so they're kind of behind on that. So the vaccine is, praise God, we haven't had much COVID here that we know of. There's very little vaccinations happening here, and they do not. They haven't said that if you're vaccinated, it's any different. Everyone needs a negative COVID test.
Okay.
And then the same for going back to the US. So there's no governmental benefit to having the vaccine. Now, as we read about what government is saying is they believe in the vaccine and they want people to have it. And they do understand that there's a difference, but there's nothing in writing that makes it any different.
Okay, and are they putting anybody into isolation on any part of this?
No, they're not. So all of our visitors, when they come in, the official governmental rule is that you're supposed to come in and quarantine at a place of your choosing, and then you're free and you get a negative COVID test. But basically, that is not, people here do not really obey that because the government, they're behind in everything. So on COVID vaccinations, they just set up some rules, several months ago, and they don't change those. So officially, that's what it would be on the website. For our visitors, we asked them to be vaccinated for their own safety. But what our visitors have done is they have felt okay, and the Nigerian leaders that we have said this is okay, but it's up to each individual. Come here, bring the negative COVID test, enjoy your time here, and then take your negative COVID test for going back. So that's how it's worked.
Okay.
What is the? I know you said that the official policy is to quarantine, but really haven't been abiding to that. What is that official time frame?
So it's for a week officially that people quarantine. So, like for example, for us, because with our mission here, our mission wants to be careful. So we would quarantine for a week. But I met with the director of our mission, and what he said was, as long as it's the nationals inviting you, it's the national church leadership inviting you, he said, go with what they say. And they say, by all means, come, and you don't have to do this because nobody is obeying it. And the government set these things in writing, but the government's not up to date on these things. So our director said, go with what the Nigerian leadership said. The Nigerian leadership said, come and enjoy and be a part of what we're doing. So you'll notice that in the visa process, you'll need letters of invitation. Those will actually come from the Nigerian leadership directly to you. They're the ones who will invite you. Of course, we'll be taking care of you, but they'll also be taking care of you, and we'll be the ones that have the official responsibility for you, even though, of course, I will be doing that.
Now, let me ask you a question. Did you say to get back out of the country, it's a test 3 days before the flight?
That is correct. So when you get your negative COVID test in the US, you upload it into the Nigerian system and you pay $105 extra. That then pays for that test that you will have within 3 days of going back to the US, because that's the rule in the US, and you'll be able to use that. And we've never had a problem with anyone traveling from here getting back into the US. The only time that changed was Germany had changed their rules, and Holland, where they overrode the US rule by saying you couldn't transit through their country unless you had done it within 48 hours. But all those rules are off now, so it's within 72 hours.
And those tests are the tests to come back to the US. They're readily available there in Nigeria?
That's correct. We have a great relationship with the government lab here. And so what they'll actually do is they send a med tech out to your guest house, and then so you don't have to go to the lab. And then they do all the paperwork on it, get us the results, and then we print that result, and that's good enough to get back into the US.
On the group of 7 that flew in, did they have, one of my concerns has been air travel. In fact, is my Lebanon, I'm supposed to do a Lebanon trip, and my admin postponed on me because of travel to Europe, and the Middle East is really bad. Was the experience on the flights of the 7 guys pretty normal, except for a few inconveniences, or was it is it a nightmare?
No, it was completely normal. And even when it got rough in Europe a month ago, we still had people coming. And it's just that we had to obey the rule of 48 hours instead of 72 hours. But even though France had shut down, Germany got strict, they were still allowing transit passengers through. We just had to obey the 48-hour rule at that time. And so we're in touch with that, but you would also do that. So do you know what airline you're flying with yet?
No, you'd given me a couple of names. I was going to lead with that with my travel agent. I'll have to go back to my notes on what you suggested, but I think you mentioned 2 different airlines.
Yeah, the main one that people take are Lufthansa through Germany or British
Right.
Airways through London. But and then what you would do is you would just stay up with the rules on it. But we also hear about that. For the most part, it's just the standard 72 hours. It's just that it did get a 48 hours through Germany for probably like 2 or 3 weeks, but that's passed.
Now, when you say 72 hours, does that mean you're stuck in London for 72 hours?
No, what it means is that when you take your COVID test in the US,
Oh,
you would
okay.
take it within 72 hours of when you fly from your first spot. So
Okay.
if you're flying from California, you have to have the test within 72 hours of when you fly out of California.
Okay, sounds good.
And then it's the same going back. It would be 72 hours from when you fly out of Abuja, the capital here, going back.
Okay.
Dan, there's a website that Dennis, the travel agent, gave me that we've been referring to, and it talks about Peter, the mandatory quarantine is being 7 days. But what I'm hearing you say is that there's no one to enforce it, and it really is about your nationals and their comfort level with having us as foreign travelers come in. Would that be true?
Yeah, that is correct. It's just like Nigeria is kind of behind and they're not up to date medically and things like that. So they put rules in place many months ago and it's not enforced. And for our national leaders, they say that's ridiculous. Nobody's obeying these rules and these rules shouldn't be there. And so we had just said, if possible, if people could have been vaccinated, we just don't want even though we can't, we have 140 staff and maybe one of them got COVID. I don't know why, if it's because it's a young population, or, a mixture of God's blessing. The other thing that is because there's malaria and things here, people have chloroquine and medicines in their system already and their defenses are up. Whatever it is, we're so glad, but we wouldn't want someone to come over here and get COVID. That would be lame. So we were just saying, if possible, be vaccinated, but that's really up to your group.
Okay, thanks. That's helpful.
Do you have any groups scheduled between now and when we're supposed to come?
Yeah, so we have a group of 10. So we have an individual coming now. We have another individual in August. We have a group of 10 in September. We have a small group for October. And then you all in November and possibly one other team coming in November.
Okay, and we said a group size of what, 20 or something?
Yeah.
Is that size still doable for you, Peter?
Yeah, that's great. Well, our largest group was 33. And so whatever the size is would be great. For us, the more the better, where everyone could experience a lot together and then we could maybe divide up according to what people want to do. So we actually have 20 vehicles. They're not all great, but we could handle 20 easily.
Okay. Well, we've had I don't know if you know what we've been doing. We've had 2 successful trips with no COVID, and then we're in Bahamas right this week. There's only one thing I think I would change on that trip, but anyway, we've been COVID free so far. So, you know, we're trying to be an example to everybody else for one thing.
Yeah.
And then we know there's a lot of huge needs. No matter where we go, there's just all kinds of misery. So,
Yeah.
anyway, Dee, how are you feeling about this whole thing?
And I'm pumped. I'm excited to go. So
Right. Are you a vaccinated type or not vaccinated?
I actually did get vaccinated.
You did. In our country, Peter, there's a lot of debate on the vaccination, just so you know. You know, there's a lot of opinions, let's just put it that way. But anyway.
Yeah, on that one, that's up to each individual person. Like I said, we haven't, there's been hardly any COVID here.
Right.
You know, the yellow fever, I think, is required, plus take anti-malarials, but we have that medicine here if you need it. So I would just really leave that up to each individual person, or your team can decide what you want to do on that. From our side,
Right.
we would just love as many people to come out and be a part of what we're doing here as possible.
Right. Well, because there's no quarantine rules, we're probably fine with this trip. Some of the trips, if you're not vaccinated, have quarantine rules. And on those trips, we'll probably say you got to go, if you want to be on this one, you got to get vaccinated. So I'm personally not vaccinated. I probably will be if I go to Lebanon. But anyway, we're trying to get a feel for where we're at. In fact, is on Mexico, I don't even know. On either one of our 3 trips, I don't even know what the ratio was. We never really asked. We were just
50-50.
50-50. Yeah, so it's been half and half. Alrighty.
Yeah, let me just say this on the vaccination. You probably already know this, but a friend of mine that works for the U.S. government, he said if you're not comfortable, maybe take the Johnson & Johnson one because it's one shot and it doesn't mess with your RNA or something. So we took the Johnson & Johnson one. It was so easy. It was one shot. We don't know all the, you know, a lot of the discussions back and forth, but that one was real easy for us. And so anyway, probably your people know that.
Yeah, Dee keeps trying to vaccinate me, but I'm also thinking he's trying to kill me. So
I'm gonna get you when you sleep, Dan.
That's what I'm a little nervous about.
Yeah, Dan, you don't know what he did to you on the Mexico trip without your knowledge.
Anyway, yeah, it's a little scary. My arms were sore for a couple of days. I thought it was because I swung a hammer by accident, but it must have been a shot. Well, I know we're pretty excited. We're going to talk to. I'm not going to ask too many more questions because that was really what I had is the COVID part. So we're going to talk to our Denver. You know, the bulk of our group was from Denver, and so we'll kind of put it out there. I think we'll go ahead if Dee's good with it. You know, our next step was probably to identify an admin for the trip and then you know, move on. But go ahead, you guys can or whatever you guys want to ask. I'm pretty much convinced we're good on this one.
Because Peter and I've been talking so often over the past 6 months, I guess. I'm comfortable with everything. I think more I was concerned for Dee and making sure Dee, you have everything, you know, set in your mind as to logistics with Peter. You know, what does that look like? How do you manage a group of 20? Peter, you had mentioned being able to break off and take some people in one direction and others in another direction to have different experiences. So when you talk about that, I think you mentioned taking the guys into the prisons. Is that still something that you would consider doing?
Yeah, so what'll happen is, as we get closer to the trip, I'll give you a list of all of the things that we're involved in. And then what we like to do is there'll be a certain amount of things that we'll want to do with the whole team the first few days. But then different individuals have different things they love. So some people, it's needy children. We have so many orphans and disabled children and other children in the ministry. And some people would probably love to focus on children. We also have many needy women, abused women and widows and others. And then there's more hands-on stuff, maybe construction, sports, other things. And then there's a lot of outreach things. So we have prison outreach and car park and, all kinds of things, but also for women, there's also women's prison, there's brothel outreach. But what'll happen is I'll give you a list, and probably you'll find out that the group will like to divide into 2 or 3 groups. And some of our biggest and best teams do that, and we actually really like it. So you're still starting the day together and you're ending the day together, and you're starting on some preliminary stuff we want everyone to see, which is a lot of things like that Steve Bray has invested in and other key things. But then the latter part of your trip, we really want people to be able to focus into the areas that they feel maybe most passionate about.
Okay. So we almost could have pre-discussions about finding out what people's interests are. Maybe even D, I don't know what you think about that.
Yeah, I think that would be great. Just kind of writing down some of the options that Peter's mentioned. I think when we get together with the Colorado group, I think that's a great idea to find out what the interests are in advance, and also identify, since there are going to be so many people coming from the Colorado group. I think if we identify a co-leader from that side, that if we decide to split into, Peter, I don't know what the security looks like that we'll have while we're there, but I would hate to split into more than two. I think would be comfortable for me. I wouldn't want to split into more than 3 groups.
Yeah, I mean, you can do it however is good for you. Speaking of security, you'll read stuff about, the terrorists and everything. So what happens is, the terrorists are up in the Northeast. We don't go near them. There's also areas of, you'll hear about kidnapping or whatever. So we use our brains. We travel during the day. We don't take you near any of those areas. You know what I mean? Like where the terrorists are, that'd be like driving from Texas to like Tennessee. You know what I mean? It's like, it's far away. But when you read about these things, it'll seem like the terrorists are all around the country. It's not like that. But there are places that become hotspots. We just stay away from those areas. But for all the ministry around here, there's no security issues. Like every team has good vehicle, driver, and national leaders that are taking you. It's not a security risk. There are some outreaches that are a little more intense for people that are open to it. So again, you may have nobody that's open to it, but we do a lot of inner city work with like gang areas. We call them drug jungles, and with different, now it's not dangerous. They don't attack people or whatever, but it's a little more intense. So you would just have to decide who wants to go on those things. So if this thing keeps moving forward and you're ready, I'll make a list of all the options, and then you can divide in as many teams as you're comfortable. And but there's not really a security issue with that in any way.
Peter, would it be possible to get that list of all of the potential options here pretty soon, prior to us meeting with the Colorado group?
Yes.
Do we have anything put together, Beth, like on this?
I think I already do. Hold on a second.
Okay.
Peter gave me the city ministry summary, and it has Gidan Beige, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, the King's Kids unit, the missions unit. That was part of it. And then you commented on a couple of other things too. So when we put the itinerary originally together, we talked about the Women's Freedom Center, the Young People's Home, Gloria Sandy, to talk about the young lady, Leah Sharabu, correct?
Yes, and other girls and women that are, being trafficked and bonded.
Is hey Beth, when we submitted that trip, did we have all that in on a document somewhere?
Yeah.
Okay, we need to get that to the original document.
I
I have a copy of the original document, but it just sounded like there was a few additions that Peter was mentioning.
Yeah, I guess my
You
point
what?
of bringing this up was that I think, Peter, we need you to flesh out some of these for us. So if you wouldn't.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll look at the original schedule
Okay.
and then, maybe make some additional recommendations and then just see what people are comfortable with. It's not dangerous, but some of it's a little more intense. Some places there's more, human waste and more, tough things to see and look at. And it depends on, what people have experienced in the past or what they're open to. There will be some times where it's if it's men's prison, of course, it's just appropriate for men. If it's women's, it's within the male prison, but the women would separate. Going to the brothels is for the women and not the men. There's certain things that would be male, female, but for the most part, I'll give you a list. Like I think Dee said, I think it's good. I'm going to look at the original schedule and then maybe make some other options available. And then you all can look through and think about what you want to maybe focus on.
Yeah, because I think you gave us a schedule that was roughly 1 week, and then you said that there are ministry options for a second week. And so if we're going November 5 through 14, the 5th is pretty much a waste, as is the 14th. So, we're looking at 8 days roughly, I guess, of intense opportunity for, engagement. We always like to try to give them a kind of a free day, a cultural day. And I think you talked about that too originally.
Correct. Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Probably about 6-7 days. Has much changed, Peter, from what you originally gave us? Maybe I don't know.
No. I just at that point, there may be some additional options, as kind of Dee was talking about. We had put together for the board a rough draft trip, and it was actually, I think I talked to Steve Bray, and he was taking off the board some of the more intense things that he was a part of.
Right.
This would be more of an introductory trip, and then any of the team members, may want to come back by themselves or may want to bring another team.
Right.
But I think it would be good to kind of dust that one off, but then add in some other possible options. And then I think when you get here, Dee, you'll see that it's not dangerous to divide up. And sometimes, because there may be times where that makes sense. But again, that's just up to you. We want to help facilitate an awesome time for you here. You'll be a huge blessing, but you'll be really blessed. But we want to do it within, what you all are comfortable with and such.
Okay.
So I found another note, Peter, on other suggestions. One of them was the government deaf school, the IDP refugee center.
Right. Yeah.
And then we commented on YWAM in order to break up just what we're seeing from city ministry outreach, to try to broaden the fingers a little bit on. So anyway, just throwing those out at you.
Yeah, that's right. And what happens is we have a lot of what are our ministry, but there's a lot of partner ministries that need help that we help a lot. So we're thrilled and want you all to be, involved in as many of those as possible. And what's really great, and you can tell the team, they can make a huge impact in a short amount of time. People know they came all the way from America. They're so encouraged and feel empowered and feel so valuable just when our people visit and, spend time with them and pray for them or kick the soccer ball or whatever it is. It doesn't take much to really encourage the people here, which is a great opportunity for the team.
Yeah, I think we felt that in Mexico, and even the team right now that's in Bahamas, because we're some of the first to go back out there, it is meaningful to so many. So thanks for mentioning that.
Hey, Peter, I don't remember if we've talked about this before, but do you have any suggestions, or are there things that that the people coming down can bring with them? then.
Yeah, so when the time comes and we see who's on the trip, there will be a lot of things that we need. So there's so many things we cannot get here. But then depending on the timing, for example, I just had a meeting with some leaders today. We have a woman who does burn ministry. She helps people with these burn garments, and they're only produced or get them through the US. We might need you to bring burn garments. We might need these special kind of water filters. We might need these different other things so that we would have sent to you, or there are some things we may ask you to purchase and we would pay you back. So when the time comes, things you can bring, it's almost like you had a huge ministry before you even got to us because of the things we cannot get here. And each of your people is allowed 2 50-pound boxes, unless they're like a frequent flyer of that airline. They maybe even are allowed 3. And those things are just like so needed. So yeah, thank you for that. When the time comes, we'll have a list, and then we'll have, people sending things to your team leader, your sub team leader in Denver, whatever. So yeah, that's really important.
It must be something you
Yeah,
said,
any
Peter.
other questions?
I think you must be something you said, Peter. Beth just got up and left.
Yeah, scared Beth away.
Yeah.
What? No. I saw an opportunity that I wanted to have happen while you were on the call.
So you got tired of it. So we understand.
No problem.
Well, I don't have to do all the talking.
Really?
Oh,
Hey Beth, did you happen to find that tentative date?
yeah, I popped it up on the chat. It's November 5th through the 14th.
Hey, Beth, why don't you turn off the recorder? Because this is enough to be recorded.